Joining us now to discuss is Michael Zezas, Morgan Stanley head of U.S. Public Policy Research. Michael, which Senate races should we be watching closest?
Yeah, so the key here is whether or not the Democrats can pick up the Senate. They are probably going to have to pick up 4 seats in order to do that. So that boils down to Colorado, Arizona, Maine, and North Carolina. At the moment, the polling leads look much better, much more reliable for them in Colorado and Arizona, a little bit closer in those other 2. So this is something I think markets are going to be paying a lot of attention to on election night, because to us, the difference between that going into Democratic control in the event that the Democrats also take back the White House versus not going under Democratic control is probably the difference between a very clear path towards major fiscal expansion and a very bumpy path towards potentially little to no fiscal expansion.
So you think there would be no fiscal expansion if the Democrats don't win the Senate?
Well, to be clear, I think you could still get fiscal expansion, but it would probably require some type of demonstration by the economy itself or markets that that's needed. And the challenge here is because right now you have the Republicans in the Senate, who part of the reason that the COVID stimulus relief package has been stalled, they very clearly laid down that they are both concerned about further deficit expansion, and they're not convinced that the economy needs more stimulus. That vote count problem will still be there in terms of getting legislation passed, even if Joe Biden takes the White House as the Republicans keep control of the Senate. So what is going to move them off of that position? It would probably have to be some demonstration that that's the wrong view. And so for investors, you might have to experience some pain in the data and some challenges in the markets before you get there.
Ultimately, though, and I get the focus on the size of the stimulus, Michael, if you did see Republicans keep the Senate and Biden take the presidency, which is the scenario you're laying out, ultimately, isn't that good for stocks to have divided, to have different parties in control? Isn't that ultimately the best outcome over history for the market?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is what investors tell us. Well, first, I would say that there isn't a lot of consistency between different government configurations and different market performances over time. We do see in the surveys that we've run with investors, they certainly believe that a divided government outcome is the best. And I would say that, to be fair to that view, it is probably the most, probably the outcome that gives you the most policy certainty. So to the extent that you know exactly what's going to happen, that's beneficial. But if you also have the view that the economy has not fully achieved kind of self-sustaining status after COVID, it hasn't achieved escape velocity, then you still would need a fiscal boost. So I think a lot of whether or not this matters comes down to whether or not you think the U.S. economy has done enough to stand on its own, or if you think we need another boost of fiscal stimulus to keep moving forward, keep the V-shaped economic recovery underwritten.
Presumably, Michael, the quickest way to get that fiscal boost would be if the president reclaimed the White House.
Well, I think that's one configuration in which it's very likely that you would get that fiscal boost. The package that's being negotiated right now in Washington, D.C., about $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion. The president regained the White House. We probably think that eventually that the progress on that would continue and you would get that passed. And again, we think if the Democrats were to take control of both the Senate and the White House, you would probably get that same fiscal boost, probably even more, because the Democrats have expressed the desire to do an even more substantial number. It's really just the configuration where the Democrats take the White House, Republicans keep the Senate, where we'd be concerned, or that there would be a tougher road to get there.
Michael, thanks for joining us.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.